I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up with the heads in the shot. 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
How about that for a turnaround performance from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They take down the New York Giants on the road, 30-7. Your final score. I mean, the 7 points for the Giants in this game, really a formality, a garbage time touchdown for them. But, you know, despite a couple of mistakes down the stretch and maybe some chunk plays by the Giants here and there, the Bucs thoroughly dominated New York this afternoon. This was complimentary football at its finest and a great return to form for the Buccaneers, who have not won a game in close to a month. They win today, break their losing spell, and advance their record to 5-6 on the year. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, live on YouTube today, celebrating a Buccaneers win. You heard me. For the first time in almost a month, we're talking about a win here for the Buccaneers. I think if you include the bye week, it's been even longer than a month since the last time we've done a podcast post-game W. Phones are on as well. Let me get that number up on the screen for you. That's no good if you can't call in without that. 305-224-1968, 747-973-0150 is the meeting ID. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. Your thoughts on that game?
Well, it has been well over a month since the Buccaneers last won a football game. The Buccaneers' last win came against the New Orleans Saints on October 13th. So it has been over a month since the Buccaneers have won a football game. So, look, you know, the Giants are a bad football team, and you saw that. But we talked about this a little bit before we pressed record here. That look like that's how, you know, you're supposed to look against a 2-8, now 2-9 football team. It would have been a little bit disappointing had the Buccaneers won on a last-second Chase McLaughlin field goal, or, oh, man, they won by getting a critical fourth down stop right at the end of the game, and they won the game by, 4 points. Like, that would have been a little bit disappointing and maybe a sign of caution, right? A red flag that, well, maybe this team isn't where they need to be. And look, and they're not where they need to be right now, right? They're still 5-6. There's still a lot of work to do, but this was a game where they came out and they made a statement. And you could tell this was a team that really needed this bye week, and they came out with a lot more energy, and they were the better football team, right? We said that on the preview show, that on paper, the Buccaneers were a better football team. They just simply were, and then they went out there and they proved that. So all around pretty good, and really, really since the Buccaneers' last win, that was the last kind of laugher, that the Buccaneers had. They've been playing in a bunch of close games here that have come down to the wire, so I'm sure it was nice for them also to have one where pretty much decided by halftime.
Yeah, I know it always sounds cliche to say, but a game like today kind of tells you the Bucs are a little bit better than what their record shows right now at 5-6. And again, you talked about where we know they are. This is how they should have beat a Giants team that is in despair the way that they are so far this season. And games like this are exactly why a lot of people believe that this team has what it takes to go on a run down the stretch here. Another fun fact, this will be a trivia question one day. Today's game marks the first time in franchise history that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have had 4 different players rush for a touchdown in the same game. I know that doesn't really bode well for betting the Bucs this week, as you had Baker Mayfield going over 1.5 on the passing touchdowns, but the running backs were featured. Sean Tucker, Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, and then, of course, the quarterback, Baker Mayfield, going up over the top to get into the end zone. A very effective day on both sides of the ball here, but let's unpack the offense first. Your thoughts on really the running backs getting going and the effective use of all 3 of those guys this week. Sean Tucker coming in at some goal line situations, picking up a 4th and 1 conversion. Stuff like that was huge, and I think Liam Cohen did a great job today.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the takeaways is that it's weird. Todd Bowles had said about, and maybe this was a little bit of posturing or trying to throw, not really giving the Giants much or whatever it may be. But he had said this week of how Bucky Irving was going to be used as sort of a not necessarily the feature back, right? But I mean, we don't have the snap counts right now. That'll come out tomorrow, but. I sure feel like Bucky Irving was in on way more snaps than Rachaad White or Sean Tucker was. Bucky Irving with 12 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown. His long was a 56-yard run. Then also 6 catches. He was actually the Buccaneers' leading catcher today. Had 6 catches. Mike Evans was second, and Sterling Shepard also tied for second with 5. But Bucky Irving also had 64 yards there. So yeah, I mean, to me, this showed that coming out of the bye week, I think you're going to see a lot more Bucky Irving in this offense. Not to say you won't see Rachaad White or Sean Tucker. Of course, obviously they both get into the end zone today, but I think you're going to see Bucky Irving be this team's feature back. I don't know if the Bucs are going to come out and say that, but actions speak louder than words, and Todd Bowles' words didn't really back up the actions today. It was a lot of Bucky Irving, and rightfully so. He looked pretty good. Had that fumble, late in the game. Bucs were able to recover that one, but other than that, I thought he looked pretty good, and they were force feeding him the ball. And you mentioned betting the Bucs about the rushing things, but we had Bucky Irving over 67.5 combined rushing and receiving, and he almost did that just out of receiving alone. Had 64 yards, so just alone, and it was a pretty good day for number 7. So I do think that's one takeaway that I have, is that this team, I think, is going to be relying a lot on Bucky Irving down the stretch here.
Yeah, absolutely. And these running backs continuing to carve out a role for themselves week in and week out. Bucky Irving with a career high in receiving today. As you said, 6 receptions for 64 yards. And he is continuing to carry a remarkably high yards per carry average. I know he had that 50-plus yard scamper today, which kind of skews it, but averaging 7.2 yards a tote today through 12 carries. I think the only guy who's been doing it as good as Bucky Irving in the NFL so far when it comes to rookie running backs is Tyrone Tracy. He had a couple of big runs today. We'll talk about his performance later on in the show, but really good day for these Buccaneer running backs and really the offense altogether. It's a good day for the offense when you see Vita Vea come in for not just 1 snap, but 2 snaps at fullback. We saw him line up there at the goal line, and that's always fun to see too. They got the chance to have a little bit of fun up there today, and that always makes for a fun afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And, it's also, it's a good day when you're looking at it, and, Baker Mayfield 24-30, so only 6 incompletions, almost 300 yards, 107.5 passer rating. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good day, when the Buccaneers have that, have that efficiency. And, you looked in their drives or whatever, right? The broadcast that listed their drives, and, they had punted, once, really it was touchdown, field goal, punt, touchdown, so really, really efficient, taking care of the ball, controlling the clock as well, moving the chains when needed to, pretty good on 3rd down, in this game. And so especially early, and that first drive was 8 minutes or whatever, so 8.5 minutes, I think it was. And so yeah, they did a good job of controlling the tempo in this game and getting it going. So it won't be that efficient every game, but it was pretty nice to see it because again, like even during the 4-game losing streak, we were looking at it, and it wasn't really on the offense, right? Now, could the offense have been better? Yeah, sure. But, it wasn't really on this offense. This offense was doing its part for what they had, right? They didn't have Mike Evans for a period of time. They didn't have Chris Godwin at all. So, there was a lot of sort of juggling, right, and shuffling along that. And I think that mattered a lot. So, and also like Mike Evans' impact today, like we'll talk about it. Like it was nice, but like it wasn't, massive, right? His presence was missed, but I think it was sort of something we talked about in the preview. The attention he brings, I think, is going to be the thing that, you're going to see mostly the difference while he still is ramping up here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, really all you got to do is just look at the game log here. 11 different receivers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today on offense, and that's what Mike Evans has the ability to do. As we had said this week, I don't think they're going to force feed him. He definitely got involved today. He was the leading receiver for Tampa Bay, 5 receptions, 68 yards for Big Mike. But opening things up for these guys underneath, or just allowing other guys to get involved. Ryan Miller had a catch today. Jalen McMillan early on in the game had a pretty impressive catch for a first down conversion. Sean Tucker, of course, Trey Palmer. Payne Durham had a big athletic catch for 26 yards. That was one of the several acrobatic catches in this game. Raheem Jarrett had a really, really nice catch, falling backwards, a fingertip grab from him, and a picture-perfect throw from the QB1, Baker Mayfield. A couple of miscues down the stretch that we got to mention. The botched handoff. Baker kind of taking a hit. Friendly fire from Luke Gedeke. Takes a hip check to the side of the head. He gets evaluated in the blue tent. Comes in on the very next drive. I don't know if anybody on the sideline was going to tell the starters to get out of that game. You know, they were having so much fun. I'm sure people would have liked to see Kyle Trask get in there at some point just to keep these guys healthy. But again, who's going to tell Baker Mayfield or any of those players to stay out of the game at that point? It seemed like he just wanted to play.
Right. It's kind of a catch-22 a little bit. Like, I personally, at that point, I probably would have just said, hey, like, just put Trask in. Like, I probably would have, but it is what it is, you know. I mean, at that, it wasn't like you were going to have him drop back and throw at all. So you knew you were going to be handing the ball off, basically. So it is what it is. It's, you know, I don't really think you saw Mike Evans out there sort of towards the end. So, I mean, it's not like they were playing him, you know, up until the very last minute, but yeah, it's going to be hard to, and I mean, not just for Baker Mayfield, for almost any football player, it's going to be hard to tell them to sort of sit down, right? That's not something that players want to do, especially in a game where they've had success. That's not something that they really want to do. And, you know, so yeah, he should be okay. I mean, he was able to return, like I said, didn't have to throw the ball at all, but was able to come back. It was described as a stinger. So I think he should be okay. But yeah, you're right. You know, that fumble. And then the next drive they don't recover that when the Giants recovered that. And then the next drive they have ends up being, you know, another fumble, which the Buccaneers do recover. So like you said, a little bit of sloppiness down the stretch, but something that I'm sure the coaches will not be too pleased with, but it is what it is.
Big time $10 super chat here from Amazement 717. That's the wrong music. Hold on. There we go. Clap it up for him. He says, I like how Liam Cohen is using our running backs in the passing game with a lack of explosive wide receivers we have now. The defense was good with pressures and sacks. Bucky is something special. Sky is the limit for him. I tell you what, man, I've said it week in and week out. I'm such a big fan of Bucky Irving. It's just so fun to watch him run the football. And there were even a couple of plays today where they weren't explosive. I mean, he had the 50-plus yard scamper, but he had a couple of receptions today where he catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage and he's able to make something out of nothing there. He's able to pick up 4, 5, 6 yards. He's been described as a human joystick by some of the people I've seen online. So I got to tell you, it's fun to watch this guy. And then, yeah, kind of getting into the defense here, Evan, they had a really good chance today to just, as we said on the pregame show, pin their ears back and get after Tommy DeVito. It was pretty early in this game that the pressure was applied. Kalijah Cansey was laying the smack down. Vita Vea gets a hit on him. Some other guys getting after him as well. Antoine Winfield, I think, gets a sack late in the game. He had nowhere to go. I mean, complimentary football. I would say the best we have seen it since probably that win against Philadelphia earlier in the season.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it's you know, we talked about on the pregame show about how, okay, Bowles' scheme needs to be better, or this and that, but at the end of the day, you know, a lot of it is the players need to be playing better, right? And I think you saw better performances today out of guys like Antoine Winfield Jr., Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey. Thought Christian Izien had a really nice day. Christian Izien is actually the team's leading tackler. Like I said, I really liked his day today. So yeah, just a lot of guys just playing better football. And look, I mean, yes, and you're going to say, well, you know, it's the Giants. I get that it's the Giants. Okay. Like, I understand that it is the Giants. That being said, you know, that's still another professional football team, and you got to take care of business. And the Bucs sometimes don't take care of business there in that spot. So with these defensive struggles, it's nice to see them, you know, sort of rise to the occasion and handle a team how they should, just like we talked about earlier. You know, it would have been a little bit disappointing if the defense, you know, well, the Bucs squeaked out a win, but it really, you know, it sort of feels like a loss because you barely beat the Giants, you know. So it is, like I said, encouraging. Now you just got to keep it going, right? You got to keep the season's not over yet. There's still a lot of football left to be played, and hopefully this is something you can build off of. Hopefully it gives confidence to guys like Anthony Winfield Jr. and Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey. Cansey, has 5 sacks on the season now. So, I mean, he's made a real impact this season, despite missing the first couple of games. He's made a real impact. So, I'm curious to see how this defense responds in the following weeks. But, this performance was a really encouraging one.
Yeah, you talked about Christian Izien being all over the field today. That first sack of the game, it was just overload pressure. They just loaded up on the line of scrimmage. Tommy DeVito really had nowhere to run, nowhere to go. I do think you hit the over on your rushing attempts today for him, at least.
I did, yeah. A 3-in-1 day for betting the Bucs. So we're still on the roll.
So he found enough lanes to run for you to hit your prop bet. But, I mean, other than that, the Bucs had him locked down if he wasn't getting the snot beat out of him by a Buccaneers defensive lineman. But, I think Todd Bowles just kind of getting back to sending these guys after the quarterback. Today was a good matchup for them to do that. They took advantage of a beat-up offensive line for the Giants, and they made it a tough afternoon for Tommy DeVito. Lavonte David forcing a fumble in this game. The immortal Lavonte David. I know we've kind of talked about him slowing down certain aspects of his game so far this season, but, games like today just show you that his football IQ is just as high as ever. I think he's still capable of being the leader on this defense. There's a couple of things where you wish he could still turn and burn like he was able to do 5-6 years ago, but other than that, man, he still has the playmaking ability, and I Bleav his 192nd career game today for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's been, doing it very well for a very long time. More of the same for 54 today.
And that's a big spot in the game because
Giants are driving.
Yes, the Bucs were in complete control. They still probably would have won. Like that probably wouldn't have changed much. But the thing about it was that was the Giants' opening drive of the second half, excuse me. And if they score that touchdown on that drive, it's then 23-7, and that was a pretty quick drive. So if the Giants defense makes a stop, then they get the ball back. Do they start to gain a little bit of confidence? Who knows what happens there, right? So a pretty major play by Lavonte David there, a heads-up play by a veteran player. So, it was really nice to see. And like I said, at that point, when the Giants came away with 0 at that point, that's where you pretty much knew, all right, this game's over. And then the Buccaneers took that next drive, and they scored a touchdown with it. So, Lavonte David continued to make plays for the Buccaneers. And again, he was another guy where we talked about, sort of slowing down a little bit. He had some moments where he wasn't as good and needed to play better. And, he did that. So, I definitely think it was an encouraging sign, again, that Lavonte David, was able to make that play, in the clutch there, kind of, right? Because like I said, who knows what happens in this game if that is a touchdown and not a turnover. So it's a big play and a big moment for number 54, who's had, tons of them over his career.
Yeah, the 31st forced fumble of his career, which ties TJ Watt for the second most among active NFL players. He is just one forced fumble behind Khalil Mack, who currently leads that category. But yeah, great week for the defense to really step up here, and that's exactly what they needed to do. I know that's following the trend of what we've been saying throughout the entire show, but the defense, I think, was exactly who you wanted to step up more in this game, right? Like we kind of had a feeling going into this that Baker Mayfield was going to protect the football. He was going to put his body on the line. He was going to play well. That's exactly what he did. Mike Evans was going to try and get back into this game. That's exactly what he did. A couple of other guys, the running backs running away with this game the way that they did, that's almost like bonus points because we expected the offense to play well. But the defense, I think, just buckling down today. And again, guys showing up, consistent pressure from the defensive line, and Todd Bowles really playing into the strengths of the guys that he had out there on the field. That was huge today.
No, yeah, for sure. Look, so we talked about in the pregame about how the quarterback change, right, for the Giants, maybe give them a little spark. And last year, it did, right? Last year, like DeVito gave them a spark. This year, though, doesn't seem to be the case. I think it might have been. Let me check the chat here. Yeah, Zach Jarvis said, "Source, I knew this game was over before it even started." And it kind of, I wasn't like that, but it kind of felt pretty early on. I think when the Buccaneers march down the field, they score that touchdown. Then the Giants go 3-and-out really quick. The Bucs get the sack on third down. To me, that thought I was like, oh, they might blow this team out. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the point that I look at was that fourth down stop. When the Giants stayed out on the field that first time in the first half and tried to go for the fourth and short, the Buccaneers stuff them right there. I think they tried a jet sweep, got a little cute. That was the moment that I think just the last bit of will that they had was knocked out of them. Again, garbage time touchdown later in the game. That's fine. I did think it was a little bit of a funny sight to see the players celebrate the way that they did after scoring down 30-0. I mean, you're an NFL player. You worked very hard to get to that moment. I'm never going to know that feeling, so I'm not going to talk down on it. It's just a funny sight, when you're losing and you dap up everybody.
Just hand the ball to the ref, high five your offensive lineman or whatever, hand the ball to the ref, walk back to the huddle. I mean, just like you said, like we're never going to be in that spot, but just. It is what it is. It would have been nice to get the shutout, but that's just the NFL. That's why you see very few shutouts, because teams, when they go up like that, they play sort of a little bit softer coverage, and that's typically what'll happen in those scenarios.
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out really quickly here as we kind of just bounce through some more talking points here to the Buccaneers offensive line today. I'm trying to find the number here on if the Giants had any sacks. No sacks for the Giants defense today. They
came into today second in the NFL, only behind the Denver Broncos in sacks. So this was a pass rush, which was actually a strong suit for the Giants. That's one of the things that was a pretty strong aspect of their team. And the Buccaneers, I mean, Baker Mayfield did help, did a pretty good job of avoiding some guys today, running for some first downs, extending plays and making throws. But at the same time, the Bucs offensive line certainly did their job, as they really have all season. I mean, I forget there was a graphic, like a chart, the other day, and it showed that the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield were like one of the most protected quarterbacks in the NFL. So that's a testament to this offensive line and how it's been built. So even without Tristan Wirfs, this is without their best offensive lineman. Okay, like they did not have their best guy out there, and even without Tristan Wirfs, they're still able to put on a strong performance again. And that's one you can't even say, well, it was the Giants, because that is a unit that has been pretty good this year.
Yeah, absolutely. You are 100% right. And again, Baker Mayfield was efficient out of the pocket today, 24 for 30, 294. No touchdowns through the air, but he did jump over the goal line for a hang it in the louver moment to get the touchdown there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We have got some crazy...
Hey, hit him with the little...
Oh, yeah, don't forget. Hey, be on the lookout. Baker might have to look out for Tommy's sketchy mafia agent. He'll get a cease and desist and maybe be sleeping with the fishes by the end of the week. You got to look out, buddy, because I think that's trademarked. I think he actually went out for a trademark on that.
I don't know. I think somebody from The Sopranos probably has a trademark on that before he does. But like I say, that's just one of the examples. Baker Mayfield, extending a play and using his legs again, which he has at so many points.
Listen, I never try to pay attention to games going on in the background. We do have a wild window of games wrapping up right now. Washington just tied the game up in the final 30 seconds. Well, they didn't because they missed the extra point. So 27-26. After that insane play, Jaden Daniels over the top to Terry McLaurin. All for naught. That game comes to a finish. The Carolina Panthers are currently tied with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not sure the outcome of that game.
The Chiefs kicked a field goal at the end to win.
There you go. So that game is over. The Panthers...
The Buccaneers' next opponent, by the way, just took the defending champs to the brink. So... Just saying. Something
to think about. The Bucs did the same thing. And
yeah. I mean, it's we're not going to talk much about Carolina today. That's a story, for the midweek show, for Friday show, but I talked about in the game preview, I said, no disrespect to the Giants or anything, but if you looked at the schedule, even though the Buccaneers were going to be playing struggling teams, I still thought the Giants were probably the worst team that they were going to play. right? The worst team that they were going to play. So now, like I said, it's about building on this performance. You got the job done. You're going to take care of business in convincing fashion. Now it's about building on it and playing even better than you did this week, playing even better next week. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's an important step. But again, a lot of football left to be played. So the job is certainly not done.
Yeah, it's about finding consistency and not overlooking any opponents, because the Panthers, they're at a point in their season where you can take Kansas City to the edge like that, and you can come away with a moral victory.
And they just won 2 straight.
Exactly.
They beat the Saints and then they beat the Giants. So they've been playing much better football lately.
They are getting hot at the right time. I'm not entirely sure how the Chargers game turned out this afternoon, but they have won 4 straight headed into this week. The Bucs are going to have the Chargers here in a couple of weeks. So you got to keep in mind, these records may not look that daunting from the outs, or without context if you just look at the schedule. But some of these teams, some of these quarterbacks are getting hot at the right time, and that may not always bode well for Tampa.
So just an update, the Raiders, who the Bucs play in a little bit, the Raiders have just started with the Broncos. The Chargers play tomorrow night against the Baltimore Ravens. So yeah, I mean, we look at a couple teams, like I said, we've talked about the schedule, right? We've talked about the schedule upcoming ad nauseum. The broadcast today highlighted the strength of schedules, right? And the Buccaneers have the easiest strength of schedule remaining in the NFC. It's the second easiest in all the NFL. So there's a real opportunity here, but it was definitely, like we said, the first step was beating this Giants team, and that's exactly what they did, and that's ultimately what mattered pretty much.
Hoping to get an official update on Jordan Whitehead. Not entirely sure what happened. It didn't look good. It was a goal line stop, tackled Tommy DeVito, no face mask called on the play, but I mean, it was definitely a pec muscle, a tendon.
Yeah, it's strained or torn.
Yeah,
I mean, it's obviously strained is what you're hoping for. Torn, he'd be out for the year. I think so. We'll see.
Yeah, I think regardless, we're going to be missing Jordan Whitehead for a couple of weeks. Hopefully, we have a concrete update for you in the coming days. But that's certainly going to be something to monitor. Looking around this game, we always say this, like it's always a much shorter show when they just dominate a team through and through, because there's really not that much to criticize or spend much time on. But, what else is kind of heavy on your head this afternoon when it comes to the Buccaneers' performance today? Because it's open and shut, like they beat a bad team the way that they should have beat a bad team. The guys who stepped up or should have stepped up and made plays today. And I don't think there's much more you could have asked for them.
No, I don't really think you could have asked for a much better performance, right, from the offense and the defense. And I think, the more encouraging thing was this defense, probably, because again, we've talked about this offense before, and this offense has been productive, but they just haven't really been getting the wins as a result. Whereas the defense, even though, like San Francisco scored 23 points, but their kicker missed a bunch of field goals. Like, the defense has not been good. And a lot of people said, well, just like you said about last week's midweek show, the numbers, right, that their offenses that they played versus the numbers of the offenses they're about to play, it's definitely sort of something about how, it might be something to do with that, right? And you play who you play, right? So Brent O'Neill in the chat says we have to win out. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think the Buccaneers have to win out. I mean, 7-0 is a tall ask. In the NFL, win 7 straight ball games. I don't think the Buccaneers have to win out. I think going 6-1 or even 5-2. Atlanta is not playing good football right now. Atlanta has lost 2 straight, and they have a couple of tougher games coming up on their schedule. So they play the Chargers next week, then they play the Vikings. So, I mean, that's 2 games where they could lose, and they still have the Commanders left. So a much tougher schedule for the Falcons down the stretch than the Buccaneers have. So I don't necessarily think the Bucs have to win out, but, they do have to take care of business in most of these games, and your margin for error is much smaller, but I don't think they have to win out.
As you said, they do have to take care of business in most of these games. Without a doubt, the division games, because the NFC South is not entirely out of reach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's really not even out of reach for a team like the Saints either, headed into their matchup this week. But I know we are talking about the division, but when you do look at the NFC wildcard hunt as well, if the Bucs cannot hang on to the lead in the NFC South by the end of the year, you consider some of the games that have happened this weekend. The Cowboys just beat the Commanders, not only because of that missed extra point, but after that missed extra point, they returned an onside kick for a touchdown. That is an absolutely wild game and a wild finish, but a big upset that I think a lot of people are going to be happy with when you consider Washington, a team that the Bucs have already beat this year, but a team that's been at the top of the NFC these last couple of weeks. You start needing them to lose.
Yeah, because you own the tiebreaker, right? That's one where Washington, I Bleav, has lost 3 straight now. So like that helps the Buccaneers. So yeah, you're starting to sort of see, and it sucks, right? Because the Buccaneers don't, like we talked about after a couple of their losses, like now you don't control your own destiny, right? You sort of have to rely on a couple of these teams, right? Another team is the Green Bay Packers, who are playing the 49ers right now. Either one of those teams, the Buccaneers, I think could afford one of them guys to lose. Obviously, one of them will. But yeah, there's a couple of things there where I do think that the Buccaneers will need some help, but they have been getting it. They have been getting it now. The Vikings and the Bears right now are in overtime. The Bears and the Bucs entering today had the same record. So, the Bears getting a loss here would help the Buccaneers. So, we'll have to wait and see. Again, there's a lot of football left. There's 6 games, right? There's a lot going to happen in these 6 games. And just like, a win today was nice. Doesn't mean the Buccaneers are going to be winning the division or making the playoffs, right? There's still a lot to happen here, a lot of football left to be played. So I'm curious to see, how they do it and how they rally, because, and again, they mentioned this in the broadcast today about how Mike Evans was talking to, I think it was Baker Mayfield in practice, this past week, and they mentioned about how, they went on a run last year, right? And they did. They were 4-7 last year. They had a worse record at this point in the season last year than they do now, and they were able to go on a run, win 5 of their last 6 or whatever, and make the playoffs and win a playoff game, and almost won the second round of the playoff game. So and they were like, why not? Why can't we do that again, right? And it's a valid point. And now they have an easier schedule, so while it's not guaranteed, I do think you can trust this team to take care of business when they need to. Yep. Against inferior opponents. King Cook in the chat says, you honestly think this Bucs team is a playoff team? LOL. I don't know if they're a playoff team or not, but the stats are the stats, and right now they're firmly in the playoff on. And I think actually with last week's Atlanta loss, I'm pretty sure the last, percentage wise, the Bucs actually have a better percentage chance to make the playoffs than the Falcons do. So whether you think they deserve to be a playoff team or not, whether you thought they were in 2023 or 2022, they were. So what I think doesn't really matter if they're going to keep stacking up wins here and being able to. But again, it's one game, right? So they have to do it again next week and the week after, there's very little excuses now because of the quality opponents you're playing, and you need to take care of business.
Absolutely, and I think they will. I think this team has the players to be competitive. Are they going to go on a Super Bowl run? No, I don't think they can. But I think they can be competitive in the postseason simply because we have seen it with a majority of this roster together in 2023. Now, I've said it before, and I will say it again. I do think in certain ways, in certain games, certain weeks, this team is held back by their head coach more than anything. I think this roster is sound. I think our quarterback is playing the best football of his career. I think Mike Evans, albeit getting a little up there in age, is showing that he can still create separation, create opportunities for other guys in this offense, and he can flourish himself. He can lead their team in receiving at the end of the day. We got a young, bright offensive coordinator who's going to be a head coaching candidate, unfortunately, but a lot of people feel good about his chances of staying in Tampa for another season. I don't know for a fact one way or the other. We will find out when we get there.
I'll say this. I feel better at this point with Cohen staying this year than I did with Canales last year.
Yeah.
It just feels like something where I don't think the Buccaneers are gonna let that happen again. Yeah. And have to go through the process of hiring another. I think if Liam Cohen is about to accept a head coaching job, unless the Bucs just finish out the year fantastic, I think there's more than zero. I guess less than, I don't know how I would say that they just fire Bowles and promote him. If that's what it takes to keep him. Not saying that will happen. But I would be pretty surprised if Liam Cohen wasn't back in Tampa Bay in some form or fashion next year. I would be surprised. Not saying that he won't get head coaching looks. But I don't know if the Buccaneers are going to let that happen again.
I hear you. I agree. Loud and clear. I think Liam Cohen is a guy that, is clearly making the most of his quarterback here with Baker Mayfield having such a great year, but he's showing that even without some of these top playmakers in the offense, he can make something happen. This Bucs offense has just been the most consistent part of this team, and they are consistently one of the best offenses in the NFL. I mean, the stats will show you that.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it didn't work out in the Buccaneers' favor, but we've seen this with the Glazers before. We have seen this, with the Glazers before about how they paid Mike Smith a lot of money to stay. I said it didn't work out, but the fact is they did it. He was getting head coaching offers.
They went on that
and they
run.
paid it. They made him the one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in the entire NFL to stay. So, Buck Wild says Cohen is better than Canales. Never said he wasn't. I feel more confident that the Buccaneers will not let him walk through that door. I just don't think they're going to let him go. So, we'll see what happens. Like, again, there's a lot of football left to be played, and we can have this discussion for a long time. Okay, it's a discussion that a lot of people always really want to have. Anyway, it seems like every week anyway. People in our chat today after a 37 wins and fire Todd Bowles. And look, and today, and just for the record, I don't want to really put thoughts or words into Rhett's mouth or mind, but he's not talking about today, with the head coach holding the team back. He's talking about overall, like how much does it limit the ceiling, right? If the Buccaneers do go on, let's say they go 6-1, win the NFC South again, that's great. Are they going to be able to win a playoff game? Maybe, depending on who they play. But again, you're going to be playing a pretty good offense probably, right? So what happens to your defense then? Does your defense get shredded? If it does, the Buccaneers make a change. That's I think the ceiling is limited with Todd Bowles. And it's crazy that that's what we're talking about this after a big win like that, snapping the 4-game losing streak. But it's a topic that I think a lot of people are going to want to have because of the success that this offense has had and, the state of where they are basically, the state of where the Buccaneers basically are. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Again, 6 games left. It's going to be a lot decided in those 6 games, and we'll see where the Buccaneers end up after that. But today was, like I said, an encouraging sign. If the Buccaneers would have won this game by, like I said, a last-minute Chase McLaughlin field goal, and you're like, oh, they won, but barely, like that would have been a little bit discouraging, right? The Kansas City Chiefs right now. They beat the Carolina Panthers, but took a last-second field goal. Like, how does that make them feel? Like does that make Chiefs fans feel encouraged about their chances going up against an AFC contender? Probably not, right? Because the Panthers are not a very good football team. But I think it's encouraging that the Buccaneers went out, took care of business how they need to take care of business, and that's really, like I said, all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about the scope of this afternoon, I thought Todd Bowles was great. We always give him his credit when he deserves it. We did it early on this season when the Buccaneers had a hot start out of the gate. We give Todd Bowles his flowers when he deserves it, and today I thought he was fine. He was aggressive when he needed to be, had that 4th down conversion early in the game. Bucs, were right around midfield, and they continue that drive. I Bleav they ended up scoring on that drive as well. So you take a chance there, and it pays off. He threw the challenge flag later in the game. I mean, there weren't in a 30-7 victory. There's not a lot of moves you can make as a head coach that would really have anyone coming away from this game being like, "Oh my God, I still hate this guy." He's when he wins, everybody loves him. And today, I think we do need to recognize that he had this team in a position to win as dominant as they did.
Yeah, I kind of feel like. And it's good, right? Because we mentioned, Rock Riley mentioned on the show on Friday that Todd Bowles' teams did not really fare well coming out of the bye week, right? I think he said Todd Bowles as the head coach out of the bye week has 1 win out of the bye week as a head coach. He's had, 6 or 7 years as a head coach in the NFL. So, I think really like this game, I don't think it's going to change your opinion too much on whether if you want Todd Bowles to be fired at the end of the year, I don't know if this game isn't going to change your mind on that, right? And if you think Todd Bowles deserves another year, game isn't going to change your mind on that. But I think it's important for guys to look ready to play, stay disciplined, and that's what the Buccaneers looked like today. There wasn't many penalties committed. They looked like a disciplined football team. But again, there's 6 games left, so they're going to have to do it again and again in order to make this run here.
Absolutely. They look the way that they should have today, and you love to see that. I will close out with this. I thought it was really cool to hear the Bucky chants in New York. The Bucs are not necessarily a fan base known for traveling, and I know that there are a decent amount of Bucs fans spread out around the country. We have seen games in the past. I remember Arizona. It may have been... Maybe it was 2017 when the Bucs played in Arizona, or it was one of those other years. But there was a year where...
I mean, they did play in Arizona on Christmas night, 2022. But
maybe that's the game that I'm thinking of. Or it was another one where they played in San Francisco, and the fan base had traveled particularly well for that one. But yeah, Bucky Irving rips off that 50-plus yarder, and then you hear, as Giants fans head for the door, the Bucky chants come down in the Meadowlands. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to, because in that area, right? Shout out to the Bucs fans in New Jersey and the Bucs fans in New York and the Bucs fans in Pennsylvania. That area basically covers kind of 3 states, pretty much. Even a state like Delaware, like it's sort of around that area kind of. So yeah, shout out to everybody there. Yeah, you definitely could hear it. And yeah, Bucky Irving is I would say, here's a take. I think Bucky Irving's probably the most exciting rookie running back they've had since Doug Martin. Like Rachaad White was good in 2022, but was he did you watch him and get excited? Not really.
Right.
At least I didn't.
Not until the end of the year.
Yeah, and even at the end of the year, it's just the way he plays, right? It's not going to be an exciting, brand of football. He was a solid running back, but it's in terms of excitement, right, and explosiveness. Feels like Bucky Irving's the first guy since Doug Martin's rookie year in 2012, where you're like this dude just pops off. He pops out at you, right? And it's pretty cool. So, and this is just year 1 for him. So curious to see how he continues to progress. I'm not sure if he's suited for a bell cow type role. I don't know if that's the best role he's suited for. But the Buccaneers clearly have found something with Bucky Irving, and again, that Jason Light guy, apparently, a lot of people think he sucks for some reason. We mentioned Christian Izien today, leading tackler, undrafted free agent. So I wonder who signed that guy. And finding Bucky Irving in the 4th round. So I do think it was nice to see. One thing I will say as we wrap up the show here, so you look at the receiving stats and everything, and then we have Mike Evans with 5, Bucky Irving with 6, Sterling Shepard with 5, and then a bunch of guys just with 1, right? And it's good that they're spreading the ball around. But you would like to see, especially in these games, you'd like to see a guy like Trey Palmer or a guy like Jalen McMillan maybe make a little bit more plays than they have been. Because at the end of the day, the Bucs are they can't have the offense. Even Cade Otton, Cade Otton had a 1 catch for 30 yards.
Well, had
2 drops though.
Yeah, a couple of ugly drops today.
So. And again, I don't understand why he doesn't wear gloves. It doesn't make sense. It helps you catch it makes your hands stickier. I don't understand why you don't want to wear gloves. I don't get it. But, I'd like to see in this game in particular, a guy like McMillan, step up and make some plays. Make me feel a little more confident about the receiving depth behind Mike Evans. Because if you're going into a playoff game, you can't run the offense just through Mike Evans and a rookie Bucky Irving. It's not going to work, right? The defenses are too good. They're going to be able to take away one or maybe both of those. So, yeah, you're going to need a guy like Jalen McMillan or Trey Palmer to step up here, which Trey Palmer did step up last season. So maybe, this time around he steps up again. But with Chris Godwin out, you're going to need one of those guys, I think, to step up. And they were kind of a little bit disappointed today.
Yeah, this is a game 30-7 against the 2-8, now 2-9 Giants. This game is not going to change hearts or minds about where the Buccaneers are, but really it's going to confirm where most people thought they were
Yeah.
headed into this stretch of games. And Brutal says
even the most pessimistic people still expect them to win this game.
Right.
So
And Brutal makes a great point in the chat. He says this is a great way to set the tone headed into this easy schedule. And that is correct. I mean, with the schedule that they have, it is no secret the Buccaneers are playing opponents who have not had a great first half of the 2024 season. I know the Panthers are really starting to pick things up. Again, we mentioned the Chargers have been playing better over the last month as well, but you go into each game with the mindset that you're going to win it by 30 points. I see no other way or mindset that they should enter these games with, because despite a big win today and feeling good about their progress, they're still kind of fighting an uphill battle here for the postseason, and they really do need to buckle down, play some consistent football down the stretch here. That's what I'd love to see, because they've had some really impressive wins so far this season, but they got to do that week in and week out, and they do have some ground to make up still after losing 4 in a row.
yeah, they definitely do, and they've put themselves in that position, right? It could have been they took care of it. If they take care of business against Atlanta one time, this is a completely different scenario right now. But they didn't, and that's in the past. They can't control that now, right? That's done. That is out of your control now. So all you can do is look ahead, and like I said, they've got 7 games here, or 6 games now to just keep that momentum going. So next week, I think it's going to be much more of a challenge, than this week was. Second straight road game. Carolina is a team who's been playing better, and it's a division game. So it is going to be a much tougher game. They're going to have to play better than they did this week. But hey, it's 1 week at a time, basically, from here on out.
Absolutely, and we will keep you updated every step of the way. But that's going to do it for this week's post-game episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast, celebrating a W. Cook up a W this afternoon. If you have leftovers, you can bring it for work tomorrow. They call it Victory Monday for that reason as well. So excited to have one of those on the calendar.
I mean, and then next week, if the Bucs win, you'll have Thanksgiving leftovers, stuff like that. So
yeah, gotta love it. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL, and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got this week?
Yeah, so we're going to have, obviously, just like every week, the post-game reactions, checking out what people are saying on Twitter about this game. Obviously, the past couple of weeks, it's been mostly negative. Now we're going to be able to put a little bit of a positive spin on things. So it'll be a nice little refreshment to be able to see a lot of, positive things along the Twitterverse, or the Xverse, I guess you could say, for my reactions article. And then, stay tuned for later in the week, the Panthers Q&A coming up. So, going to be turning the page on to Carolina here soon, but, have, obviously, this week's going to be a little bit of a weird one, right? You got Thanksgiving, you got Thanksgiving football, and you got Black Friday football. So it's going to be a whirlwind of football. But, we'll be here next Sunday covering the team against the Panthers as well. So, and next Sunday is actually the Buccaneers, one of their first 4 p.m. games, I think, this season. It's a 4:05 start. So they haven't really had many, if any, of those this year, I don't think. So, it will be it should be a good one as they play the Panthers and Dave Canales now for the first time as head coach of the Panthers.
That'll be an exciting matchup. We have got one more nugget of trivia for you before we go, and this is just something I thought was really interesting here. Mike Evans, he is a habitual breaker of records, pretty much franchise leader of everything offense for the Tampa Bay
seems like every
Buccaneers.
week now he's doing that.
Yeah. Well, he has another NFL all-time record under his belt. Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is now the all-time NFL leader in defensive pass interference yards. He overtakes Randy Moss with 819 to have 834 DPI yards drawn in his career.
Nice.
Consider this elite company. Randy Moss, Mike Evans now the new number 1, Randy Moss number 2, Marvin Jones number 3, Torrey Smith number 4, Jimmy Smith number 5, Antonio Brown number 8. That's a surprise there.
AB was so freaking, dude, from 2016 to 2018, like those
Nobody,
3 years, unbelievable. He was
nobody.
unbelievable.
I've tried to explain this to some people. Nobody better than that era of Antonio Brown. If you got a full career of that guy, he would have been untouchable.
He would have been the best wide receiver ever.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was so ridiculous what he was able to do on the football field. I mean, there's a couple of those guys, receivers. Like if Calvin Johnson played 3 more years or so, right? Like what would he have done? Like there's a couple of guys, but yeah, AB from like the mid to late 2010s, just crazy.
Yeah, up there with the ranks of Buccaneers legend Julio Jones, I think.
Yeah, I mean Julio's run from, I mean he actually had a longer run than AB did, just not as dominant. But yeah, I mean Julio's another guy who, if he sort of wouldn't have tailed off towards the end there, like and the injuries sort of did him in. Antonio Brown just went crazy. Injuries sort of did Julio in, so that one kind of sucks. But yeah, there's a bunch of those dudes. We could sit here all day, and name a guys. But the funny thing is, a lot of these guys end up playing for the Bucs. The list of legends that end up playing for Tampa Bay are quite. Because I was going to mention, the Steelers, right? And we talk about the killer bees, like their offenses, right? Steelers are known for their defense. The offenses when AB was like that, where it was insane. They had Le'Veon Bell to the Buccaneers. So it's like, it is funny. Some good trivia stuff. We always like a good trivia thing. So in 10 years, you're going to be able to name some big names that used to play for the Buccaneers. Like I said, it's like always, I remember that graphic. I think it was 2020 or 2021, I think it was 2020 after the Bucs had signed Antonio Brown, and they were like, imagine telling somebody back in 2015 that this would be the offense, and it's Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, LaShawn McCoy. It's just like so many just studs. So yeah, it's always fun to look at that. And yeah.
Absolutely. There's, a lot of guys that have worn a Buccaneers jersey that you wouldn't expect. Anthony Munoz is another one of them when you consider one of the greatest all-time offensive tackles, Hall of Famer for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was technically a Tampa Bay Buccaneer at some point. Tim Brown, it was brought up in our chat, was technically a Tampa Bay Buccaneer at some point. So yeah, some pretty crazy trivia questions do exist in the long and storied history of the Red and Pewter Pirates. Last but not least, you can find myself. This is our longest intro of all time. You can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Redicus. If you follow me, I will follow you back. We can talk all things Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going to be a busy week tweeting. Follow us at cannonfirepod. Plenty of great content and plenty of great content for you here on the YouTube channel throughout the rest of the week. YouTube.com/cannonfirepodcast. We have got the best and worst players of week 12 dropping for you on Victory Monday. And plenty of great stuff throughout the rest of the week as we get you ready for another NFC South battle. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will talk to you guys in the next one. Thank you, as always, for hanging out with us, and we'll see you soon. Go Bucs.